Herkese merhaba, hoş geldiniz.
Hello everyone, welcome once again. This is the final session of our conference, which is on history, memory, and on place. It is not the last session actually, it is the penultimate session. We'll have another session about general evaluation. Ayhan Aktar will moderate that very last session, and we will also give out the results of the History and Memory Research Fund. I've been here since yesterday, and it's been really satisfying and really stimulating, which gave rise to new questions. Many new windows have been opened after the last session. People from different disciplines, when they get together, it is incredible to see how nicely they interact and how inspiring it is also for us, not only for themselves. So we will look at different disciplines once again. There are 3 young researchers who are from different backgrounds who will talk about history, memory, and place interrelations based on their own research. Now, we'll follow the order. We'll start with Sedat Ulugana. He received his BA degree in Turkish philology at Selçuk University. Then he went on to study Kurdology at Mardin Artuklu University, focused on the Mir of Bitlis, Abdalhan. He is now continuing his study in France, in Ehes, and he looks at the province of Bitlis between 1908 and 1915. Sedat Ulugana has published many books, and he'll talk to us today about Filistan. Yes, please.
Ben biraz aceleci davrandım.
I was rather hasty, I'm sorry. My presentation focuses on the area called Filistan, which is an area to the north of the Van Lake. Now, Fileh, definition as the Kurds call it, the word they use for Armenians. The word flah is the adapted version of the word fellah. It comes from Arabic origins, and it refers to peasants or farmers. And the Kurdish intelligence believe that the masters or farmers who are not organized in a tribe, who are different from themselves from a religious and a racial perspective, are called Fileh. And the fact that Şerefname was also written by a Kurd does not talk about the word Filah, because it is actually written in Persian. Now, the Kurdish writer Mele Mahmud Bazidi, who was born in 1797, in his work called Adatü Rusumat-ı Ekradiye, talks about the word Fileh 7 times for the Armenians who opened their homes to the barbaric Kurds coming back from the highlands. And interestingly, Bazidi in many places also talks about the word subjects as a synonym for Fileh. I'll tell you about the location now. Filistan. It was difficult to draw this shape, I have to say that. Now it's Van, Erciş, Ağrı, Patnos, and Bitlis, Adilcevaz regions are included in Filistan. The Süvpan Mountains and the Arin Lake are part of this area, so the local Kurds call this region Filistan. It is a compound word which brings together flesh, the word flesh, which means Armenian, and istan, which means the homeland. First of all, we see that Kurds use it. We asked about this to the interviewees, people between 80 to 100 years of age. Now, unlike other villages where Armenians and Kurds were living together in Erdish, Adicevaz, and Patnos mountainous regions, in this region called Filistan, there was a lack of Kurdish or a different group, which even makes this wording flesh stronger. According to Hacı Sadık Çelik, the borders of Filistan are Erciş Pertak village on the east, and on the west it is the Gojar village of Adicevaz. There are about more than 50 villages, part of this region, and people are using the newer names and the Armenian names. Well, one of the oral history sources we talked to was born in 1930. His name is Sadık Çelik, and there was also Eyüp Barkıç, born in 1915 in Akçıl. He says that their grandfathers also talked about this land in the same way, and the reason for this is because it was only made up of Armenians. This region was only home to Armenians. Now the Filistan region, prior to 1915, in almost all villages, there were monasteries and churches, and Nerkin Akçıra, which is downland Akçıra Monastery, and Asraf Julge monasteries are the well-known ones. And it was where people went to worship. But then after 1915 it was left to its own fate, and people have devastated the land, and the stones were taken to build other places. Eyüp Barkıç says there were two monasteries in Arçıra village. One church was surrounded by orchards, and there was a huge edifice there made with white stones, and he used to play games with the other children of the village. And even those who were born later on, people say that they remember the ruins of this monastery, and a guy named Halil has devastated this orchard in the 1980s, and they have seen that certain trees were bleeding as he was uprooting them. And this was home to lynx and fox. Well, I remember this because I was born in this village. This is the area, the monastery in ruins. People still call it the visiting hill, and they make sacrifices and other rituals on that very hill. So, looking at the architectural structure and the cultural life. Well, the houses were made of the lava from the Süphan mountain, and there were no windows on the houses. Well, Armenians call it yertik, Kurds call it kulek. The chimneys in the dome ensured ventilation and lighting as well. There is the tandoor, which is the thunder to do the cooking. These tandoors came from a soil which was called halikork, and all the clay pots and pans were also made from this soil. So it was harsh winter conditions, and all these soils and edifices were so strong that even after the 1915 genocide, they could still stand for some time. Ido and Heto families that resettled in this part of the region after 1915. The first generation from that family, Eyüp Barker, says that they just made a superficial cleaning and could live there. And some of these buildings even stood alive until the 80s. And James Brand, who was the Erzurum Consul General of England, who went through Filistan to go to Adil Cevaz, talks about the advanced farming methods, how fertile the soil was, and the quality of wheat. And the new modern agriculture techniques were being implemented by the Armenians for a long period of time. And there was a great grapes as well. So Celile Celil looks at the resources and says honey keeping was done. We asked about this to Eyüp Barkış, and he said yes, bees were kept, but the Kurds that came to the region after the Armenians did not know much about beekeeping. This is why they did not sustain it. And this is what his grandfather told him. Again, small animals were kept about all around Filistan region. Also livestock, cattle was raised, and these were really fertile pastures for these cattle. And also fishery was an important occupation. As you know, grey mullet is a very rare type of fish which can be found only in Lake Van. And also the Archira Bay was also very good, and you can make the brine version of this fish, which is called darek by the local Armenians, and it is sold to other places. And here, this Filistan area is particularly like a grain silo or a granary for wheat. Maevsky's, the Russian consul, writes about this. And in this article, I've looked at the Ottoman original, because Abdal Vanlı has translated it to Turkish, and when you place them together, many things were lost, which I found later on as well. Many things were changed. So this was an annotation that I wanted to mention. And again, fruit business was also important. Erciş grapes were a rare type of grapes which were heavily planted in areas like Kanzak, Panon, Anzaf, Tilan, Agısraf, Tonduras, Muy, Gurguz, Cudgah, Deir, and Armizon villages, and very good wines came out of this. James Brand, on his way to Agısraf village, talks about these vineyards and says they bought some high-quality wine from the Armenians in Agısraf. And there was also soap-making occupation of regional Armenians. Porang, which is still a name used in the region, they were producing porang, and the British Consul General says he saw this in Arin, which is by the lake, by the water, and mostly Kurds bought this sort of soap. Now also the Filistan Armenians spoke the Kurmanji dialect of Kurdish, and also Kurds who worked as peasants or farmers in Filistan say it was said that they also spoke Armenians. Now, Filistan throughout history. Travelers or historians going through the region between 1533 and 1536, it is said that a magnificent Süleyman stops by in the region, and again Evliya Çelebi, the traveler Çelebi, talks about villages like Norshen and Demirci. They call it Demirci, the ironsmith, because the villagers deal with iron. They work with ironing business. And then Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, the French traveler and the merchant, talks about the Spanktiere, which is the Sipan village, right after Adil Cevaz. From what these travelers have to say, we understand that there was a certain level of welfare in the region and it was safer compared to the mountainous regions around. But unfortunately, because in the second half of the 18th century the central government lost power and the Kurdish tribes started going through crisis amongst themselves, they go down from the highlands and go to lowlands, so the Kurdish dominance takes place. And according to Brand, it's said that this Filistan region in the 1830s are scenes of, in quotes, robbery events where Kurds were perpetrators. And by the end of the century this turns to plunder. Now, Filistan region has a very significant family called the Tyrone family. They are actually the cornerstone of my presentation here today. I'm sorry, I'm a little excited. This is why I'm stuttering, says the speaker. Well, this family of Tarhans think that they are a holy family by the Muslims, Christians, and also the Jews. And this dynasty has certain privileges in the eyes of the Ottoman Empire. I think this was because of a very popular legend in the region. According to this legend, Ali, who was who had married the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, was hit with an arrow on his heel. It wouldn't get better, and only then the Armenian servant realized this and took it out with his teeth. And Ali puts a tax exemption to this dynasty and gives them rewards. So these people say that they were the offspring of that dynasty, and Wigram says that they have seen with their own eyes documents where Ali said they would be exempt from all taxation, and also pieces of clothing from Ali, which was always wet or humid. Actually, for centuries long in the Adicevaz region, this is the legend that is told from one generation to another. Kevle Hazreti Ali is the Kurdish name of that. The oldest version comes from the traveler Çelebi, actually. Supan mountain keeps exploding, and because of the volcanic hinterland, Van Lake has a very good water which has a high cleaning property. So according to what Çelebi has to say, the traveler has to say, around Erzurum the female dragon is bored, so she keeps fidgeting around in her home at the Supan mountain, and this shakes the earth. Sometimes she just does so because she feels like it. And one day she eats everyone up and goes back to her nest in the mountain. Later on, this dragon also visits the people of Ahlat. And the Ahlati people go to the prophet. And the prophet asks Ali to kill the dragon. Dragon is killed by Ali and is thrown to the Van Lake. So this is why Van Lake's water gives you very clean laundry, and this is why the fish is extra delicious. Now, according to Çelebi, the fact that the mountain is still roaring because of the offspring of the dragon which are still left around. Ali could not kill them because they were yet babies, but still closed the door on them so that they wouldn't be able to come out. Well, this story actually shows how intertwined different beliefs were in the region. And in the area of Adilcevaz, Christians, Muslims, Yazidis, and the Jews believed in this story. So one Armenian became the surgeon or the servant of Ali, and with this reputation, Muslims also showed respect and gave him privileges. Well, although this family, Tyrone family, is referred to as the tribe or the family, we do not know how many people this were. Verkin Archira village came from this family, and this region is still called the Tarhani area. So we looked at the Ottoman archive and we have seen some correspondences. One is like that. It was asked if in the Adil Cevaz area, if the family of the Tarhans are exempt from taxation. So this was the question that was asked, if those people are exempt from these extraordinary taxations or not. I have 5 minutes left, so I have to really be brief. According to Kerem Koto, there are things he says about the Tarhan family. He says, one day we received an order so that we behead the Armenians, and then the armed militia and the Kurds went to Filistan. They have gone from one village to another and they've killed the Armenians. And in Terhani there were 6 or 7 households. The Terhan Aga and the 2 sons actually took their treasures with them, but then they changed their mind. So they gave me their treasures. We stopped someplace, and so that I wouldn't run away, they tied me up and they have buried those 2 sacks, and then they ran away. Actually, they were good people, the Tarhans. They loved to be good to other people. They gave food to everyone. For example, in the Saz region by the sea, in the place that we call Kelefe, there was a small Ezidian population, and those were the people who were enemies of the Muslim Kurds. There was blood feud between them. So the Tarhans always warned those against the Yazidis. They say, please be careful, otherwise Yazidis might kill you. So if I have a little time, I'd like to talk about genocide. Okay. Now the genocide in the region was conducted usually by the Haydaran tribe, particularly in 1895 in the plunders that have taken place. All the churches and the monastery in ruins are further devastated. Well, it's too long, so here's what I'd like to tell you as a result. In the region still about the genocide, there is a very strong memory for the Kurds, that is. Ismail Barkash used to tell, when I was little, I still remember. Then I confirmed it with his sons. I still remembered what he had said when I was a child, and then I told it to the family, and they said, yes, he was telling this. So he knows the subjects in the village, the people in the village. And then he sees the dead body, and he said that the respiratory tract was totally black, and he said he used to smoke a lot. I saw it in his funeral. So his respiratory tract was really all black, so he kept talking to the villagers about how bad smoking was. And then Ediyor Shoran was one of his relatives. He supposedly burned down Armenians and gave them a sacrifice to God, to gods. Another story is told by Eyüp Barkash, by giving names actually. Someone named Abu kills an Armenian named Arko, and next to this Armenian Arko there was a daughter. So he takes Arko and makes her Fatma. I remember Fatma. She was 14, 15, and she was still alive. So such things happened. It will be published later on. Thank you.